Welcome to Let's Talk Security, where we spotlight cybersecurity companies and give an inside look at the people and technology behind the latest advancements in the industry. We discuss a wide range of topics with subject matter experts about today's cybersecurity challenges and how their solutions are helping organizations like yours maintain a continuous security posture. Please welcome the host of Let's Talk Security, Jeff Wolach.
Today on Let's Talk Security, I will be speaking with the company Aviatrix. Joining me is Hammad Alam, Principal Solutions Architect at Aviatrix. Welcome, Hammad.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
No, thanks for joining us. Hammad, I have some questions I'd like to go over with you today to generate some conversation. So I'll just start right away with a little bit about, tell us a little bit about Aviatrix and your role as the Principal Solutions Architect over there.
Absolutely. So Aviatrix is a cloud networking company. And when I say cloud, so we're focused on public cloud. And the focus of Aviatrix is to build enterprise-grade networking and security in public cloud. And we build public cloud networking security for single cloud and multi-cloud. So you can't do multi-cloud right until you do a single cloud. So we do single cloud, and then we extend and we give our customers optionality to extend into multiple cloud as and when they like to. So my role at Aviatrix as a principal solution architect started about a year ago. Before that, I was at VMware for about 6 years doing NSX, and I was a VCDX for NSX there. As principal solutions architect, what I'm doing is I'm helping our customers to build their architectures in public cloud. People have a whole lot of stuff on-prem. They're extending that into public cloud. So how do I do that as an enterprise, right? And bring all the governance, controls, security requirements that I have from an enterprise perspective and implement that in the cloud is a big challenge. So that's what Aviatrix is out there to solve for customers. And that's what my role entails.
Great. Hammad, cloud, when we talk about cloud, I saw this the other day.
So true. So true.
But no, really, when organizations are moving to the cloud, they're finding that the cloud is a lot different from what they're used to with their on-prem networks. What would you say are some of the challenges that organizations are facing when moving to cloud?
That's a great question, because sometimes I feel that people don't realize how different the world is, and as you just showed, it's somebody else's network. So what you're doing first off is you're handing off control, right? Which is great for organizations because you don't want to control too much. Anything that you can give up so you can focus on the business, that's great for you, right? But still, you need control to be able to do things. And what are those things where people are finding challenges? So if I'll break that into three things, right? So first of all is build challenge. So I'm going in the public cloud, and the cloud provider is great, it's providing me a lot of stuff. And people assume, and oftentimes I feel that at the business level, people assume that cloud provider is going to give me compute, networking, security, storage, and everything else at enterprise grade and at a cheaper price, right? I mean, which doesn't really happen. It doesn't work like that. So what public cloud provider gives you is a basic construct, especially for networking and security. So from an enterprise perspective, when I go in, first challenge is how do I build? Do I take all these Lego pieces that the cloud provider gives me and I stitch it together myself? I have like 2-3 guys who are stitching it, then what's going to happen to everybody else, right? So building, number one, is problem. And even if I build in one single cloud, how do I extend to multi-region and multi-cloud? Do I have to do everything all over again? So build is a huge challenge. The second thing is whatever I build, if I build and it doesn't have eyes and ears, so for visibility and operations, so what that means is the two guys who built it, they will be supporting it forever? No, right? You need something that has eyes and ears so that the entire org can support it, the front tiers can support it, right? So the building with eyes and ears is an important thing. And the third thing is that I don't just want a basic connectivity so everybody can talk to everybody. What I need is advanced, services, air gapping, segmentation, DMZ environments. I have overlapping IPs. I have data centers, customers, partners, egress, ingress, extranet, like all this kind of stuff needs to connect in. So how do I do all of that, right? So the build, operate, and advanced network services are the three key challenges that enterprises are facing when they're going in cloud. And there's no prescriptive approach for them, unfortunately.
No, and you're correct with that. I mean, I dabbled a little bit in public cloud, and obviously I'm old school. So you have a lot of moving parts when you're trying to actually just build something in the cloud, not only from the the network side, the segment side, the subnet side, all of that, just also from the interface side on the virtual machines. So there's a lot of moving parts that need to be coordinated, and that's a challenge, obviously. As we know, some of the customers that we work with, they're saying they don't want to put all their eggs in one basket when it comes to public cloud. You mentioned MultiCloud, so they want to put and expand into other cloud providers. What are some of the challenges with that that you're seeing as well?
Yeah. So the first thing is that you got to build the first cloud right? Nobody's going to be a multi-cloud day one, right? So you got to start with the first region or first cloud, and you do that right. And that's where Aviatrix comes in, and all of our functionality comes into single region of single cloud, and then the optionality of expanding. Now, as customers, what I'm not seeing today is that people don't have their app is spread across multiple clouds, right? A single app or an app stack, which maybe 2-tier, 3-tier, usually tend to live in a single cloud. But what organizations are looking at is that different cloud providers have different edge, right? For example, AWS is great for DevOps people. Azure, of course, all the Office 365 and everything that they do in that arena. Google has ML, AI, analytics, all that kind of stuff. Oracle has their databases, right? So everybody has their own expertise. So as an enterprise, what I don't want to do is go to, let's say, AWS and use all of just their services. I want to use the services that's best of breed wherever it is available. But then if I use DevOps in AWS and Microsoft services in Microsoft and GCP AI and OCI DB, how do I connect them, right? So those are some of the challenges that customers are facing. So the desire is to use the best of the breed from the provider, but then the challenge is how do I make it seamless? And then also, because I don't want my networking team and operations team and everybody to go through training of each different cloud, because that's going to be a massive a task for a management from a time, resource, and just investment perspective, right? So I want something which gives me seamless, repeatable interface and way of building, whether I'm in one cloud or the other. So a combination of these things are what I see enterprises desire to extend. And then if you look at how the businesses move, right, you have merger acquisitions. And in large enterprises, or even in medium-sized enterprises, you have different business units who are just going ahead with their own initiatives, right? DevOps team go ahead and do something. Virtualization team build something in Azure, and somebody else is doing something. And then enterprise IT comes in and say, whoa, what's going on, right? Like I have all these shadow IT and buckets, and I need to take control. I can't ask the database team to move out of OCI and go in Azure just because I, as a network team, wants that. No, I need to support whatever the business wants to do, right? So that's where we come in, and Aviatrix helps those customers kind of solve these challenges and problems.
Great. Aviatrix talks about Cloud 1.0, Cloud 2.0, and beyond. Can you elaborate a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, so to the audience, I would really say that listen to Steve Mullaney, our CEO, talk about it, because I won't do justice with that. But at a high level, what that means is, like, if you think about 5 years ago, enterprises said, we're going into the cloud, we're going into the cloud, but they didn't really mean it, right? So they didn't really go in. But about a 2 year ago or so, It was like on a Tuesday morning, as Steve said, all the enterprise said, now we are serious and now we are going in. So about 2 years ago, we saw this massive movement of enterprises where they said it's no more fun and games, and it's a real critical infrastructure and revenue generating applications that we're going to host in the cloud. And then we got hit by COVID, right? Which is a massive, massive accelerator for cloud adoption, right? So that's what the cloud 1.0 was, when everybody was just talking about it, but nobody was doing it. Cloud 2.0 was when, people really got, okay, we're going to do it and we're going to take overshadow IT and we're going to build things right. And now with COVID, it's just accelerate. Everything is accelerated, and it's just massive adoption. And this wave of change is 10,000 times faster than whatever we saw in client server and other movements in the past decades or so.
So Aviatrix, your tagline is one architecture, one network, any cloud. Can you explain what that means to our listeners?
Yeah, so I would quote one of our customers as a bank out of Miami. What the CIO there said, that kudos to my single cloud ninjas, that they went in, they learned the cloud, they brought us in, and they did whatever was needed. Salute to them. I really appreciate what they did. But I, as a CIO, cannot repeat that when I need to go in Azure and GCP and OCI, as I said before, right? That investment is just too much, right? So what they need, as a CIO, what he needs is he needs to maximize the skill set that his team has without the massive effort of learning every cloud individually. So what Aviatrix bring is that you have your network, right? Your enterprise network, which is built for an architecture which is applicable on any cloud, right? And it's an architecture that builds your network, right? So if you think about this, right? Oftentimes when I'm talking to customers and I ask them to put their diagrams out, right? What they do, they would build a big bubble of AWS and a big bubble of Azure, a big bubble of this and that, and they'll build their VPCs inside that, right? That here I am, I have a direct connect, I have Express Route, this and that, right? So if you think about the mindset, what that is that AWS or Azure are the big boys, and I'm this little thing which sits inside that, right? What we want to do is we want to flip that picture, and we want the enterprise to say, you are the big bubble, right? So you draw yourself big, and AWS and Azure and GCP are the small bubbles inside your enterprise cloud, because this is the change of mindset, right? That my enterprise, my architecture, and I get to choose if my application go in AWS, Azure, GCP, OCI, and the architecture should just support it. It doesn't matter where the application is, right? So that's the mindset that we're bringing to empower the enterprise business, and then enable the infrastructure teams to support the business decisions.
Oh, you're absolutely correct. I mean, and that obviously takes me to my next question about one of the key features of the Aviatrix platform is the multi-cloud network architecture. I think you guys call it MCNA. How does that benefit organizations? I think you kind of explained it a little bit, but if you want to elaborate on the MCNA.
Yeah, so MCNA is the need of the day, essentially. So when you initially talked about, right, it's public cloud is just somebody else's cloud, right? So the basic need is that when I'm in single region of a cloud and I go in second region of the cloud, they are island of their own, literally. Even within a region, and I'll take Azure as an example. You build Express Route Gateway based transit, you build another one, they're just isolated from each other. You take one TGW, second TGW, they're just isolated from each other. You want them to talk to each other, you have to go back on-prem for them to talk to each other. Like literally, that's single region. Now, when you extend that to multi-region and multi-cloud, this problem just becomes bigger and bigger. So the idea of MCNA is for customers to build a transit-based architecture. And this is a repeatable architecture, whether you're in single region of a cloud or multi-region, multi-cloud. It's the same architecture that you rinse and repeat. So think about like in on-prem, when you were designing a rack, you chose 16 servers, two NIC each, 2 power, blah, blah, blah. Like you designed a blueprint, right? And then you rinsed and repeated that, whether you needed 1 rack or 100 rack, whether it was 1 data center or 10 data center, right? You have that blueprint. So MCNA, it provides that blueprint architecture for enterprises. So when they're in single region, multi-cloud, doesn't matter. You use the same architecture and it gives you full enabled and connected multi-cloud environment. And connectivity is just the first piece of it. Then you need advanced services like, inserting firewalls, encrypting them, segmenting them. You have partners coming in and you want to just lock them into one VPC. You have your, developers or contractors that are VPNing in, and you need to give them access to specific services. Your applications need access to internet. Like there's so many things that need to be done. And MCNA is a common repeatable architecture, whether you're in AWS or Azure or GCP, that the same thing, same look, feel, visibility is available.
No, and that's actually something that when we first were talking to Aviatrix about partnering with you guys, we really saw the value behind making the cloud easier and making it to where, data center architects and folks that are used to the on-prem environment can actually, like you say, rinse and repeat, replicate what they know, what they're used to in an on-prem world. So obviously, like I said, the MCNA was your key feature, the meat and potatoes, as you called it. List some of the other key features of the Aviatrix platform for us.
Yeah. So I would start with transit, and some customers who are in primarily Azure, GCP, OCI, they may not know what I mean by transit, because those clouds don't usually use that term. So transit is so when you have the basic connectivity premise in any cloud is a VPC or a VCN or a VNet, right? When you have a bunch of them, like 2, 3, 4, you can just pair them with each other, full mesh. But of course, that doesn't scale. So the architecture that allows them to communicate with each other in a scale out manner is transit-based architecture, which is hub and spoke, right? The traditional hub and spoke. So Aviatrix Transit is a hub and spoke architecture, which allows you to build a hub that you can connect, hundreds of transits, and you can have multiple hubs, whether you're in single region. And I'll double click on this because we're working with a lot of customers who have different line of business, as an example, right? And you don't want, a prod and a test and a dev environment to be just connected to the same transit and just, they're able to talk to each other, right, freely. You don't want that. We've seen that in customers, especially like with AWS TGW, where customers have all the different VPCs connected to the same transit, and there's no control, right? And a test workload can bring production down because it's just sitting on the same thing. So what Aviatrix Transit allows people to do is to have repeatable transit architectures within a single region that you can just connect. And then you extend that same transit in multiple regions. So the transit provides you inter-VPC in connectivity, inter-VPC, inter-VNet, inter-region, inter-cloud. So that's connectivity. But then, as I said before, basic connectivity is not enough, right? You need more things. I need traffic engineering. I need BGP from my on-prem sites, right? I have branches that are coming in. We have a customer with a number of gas stations, like about 1,000 gas stations in the East Coast, and they have all these gas stations that have some customer-facing applications that they need to access, right? So how do I securely provide access from these 1,000 locations without going and manually configuring IPsec route connectivity and BGP route tables? To how to automate all of that? So Cloud WAN is one of the features that allows you to do that. Then everything that Aviatrix build is encrypted by default. Like nothing that we build is non-encrypted. And when you build encryption, there's an inherent limitation. And if we have time, we'll talk about that. And we overcome that limitation. Then, segmentation. We have prod, dev, test, UAT, line of business 1, 2, 3 different types of things that are running in the enterprise. And if you want to air gap them from each other, like line of business 1 should not talk to line of business 2, right? How would you do that without manually going and managing the route tables and configuring all these things? That's a massive, take for the enterprise IT to do manually. So we manage all of that for the customers. And then visibility, I would say, is one of the most important things. Oftentimes, I say that don't build your operations around architecture. So what that means is don't build the architecture and then think about operations. Build your architecture around operations. Build something that your operations team can actually manage. And funny that I put this out on LinkedIn a while ago, and a friend of mine, he's a network engineer, right? And he didn't like that. And he said that, but that means that, I won't be able to do any cutting edge stuff, right? And I said to them, if you want to do that for production environments, then be ready be on call 24/7, because you would be the only guy who knows how to troubleshoot that, right? So, I mean, it's a double-edged sword. You want to be doing those things, but you don't want to do those things without eyes and ears built into it. So Aviatrix builds all these cutting-edge network, but then we do with visibility into it. So we have a platform component called Copilot, which gives you dynamic topology. So what's being built in the cloud, because it's no longer time for Visio diagrams in the sense, because VPCs and VNets are being brought up and down all day long. You can't manage that on Visio. So dynamic topology mapping to see what's going on, what is being built, who's connected to what, latency. So as an example, if application says, hey, my app and web have 200 millisecond latency, it's the network's problem. You can go in a second say, you know what, network latency is 70 millisecond only, rest is your application, right? And you can actually demonstrate those kind of things, right? So all of these things and much more are the feature set that Aviatrix brings. So building is just, day 0 of your life. You'll be done with building in a month, 3 months, 6 months, year, that project is going to be done. But day 2 is every day of your life, right? So if you build without operations, visibility, troubleshooting, it's going to be a very difficult life. So we heavily focus on that from a feature set perspective.
Yeah, no, I know about visibility. I mean, that's my background, right? I was
Nice.
worked for the first company that ever created the protocol analyzer, the sniffer analyzer.
Oh, wow.
So
Nice.
troubleshooting communications is obviously my DNA. And that's very important, obviously, when you're building networks, when you're first, building them, initially, and then obviously day 2, as you mentioned, after that, being able to identify what the problem is. And in the cloud, it's very difficult unless you have a solution like the Aviatrix platform. So Hammad, since we are talking about security, and the name of the show is Let's Talk Security, tell us a little bit about the security features of Aviatrix.
Yeah, so we have a huge focus on security, and I'll walk you through some of the aspects, and of course, each of these, would take a day of its own to, deep dive, right? So I'd highly encourage the audience to then, pick on the different use cases and problems that I'm talking about and look at them individually. So the first thing I would say is encryption, right? Just to begin with. So if you think from a trust boundary perspective, when you were on-prem, you didn't really need data path encryption because it was a trusted zone. But now when you're in the cloud, you first have to define and decide, is it trusted zone for my data path or not, right? Most of the companies that we're looking at, they define that as untrusted, right? Because it's a shared tenancy model. So, and especially with, in Europe, let's say GDPR, and in California and other places now, and financial industry and different verticals, they just have a inherent requirement of encryption, right? So everything that we do is encrypted. So that's number one. Number two, when you're connecting your on-premises data centers to public cloud, so you're using Direct Connect or ExpressRoute or Google Interconnect, those paths are 10 gig usually, or multiple 10 gigs of private link connectivity, but those links are unencrypted. So if you're doing any data transfer, any communication on those links is not encrypted. And your life on that is only as long as the security or compliance team doesn't figure that out. And we've seen that over and over again. There was this customer who came to us saying, we do database replication from on-prem to Azure, and we were doing fine and everything was good because we nightly do like multi-terabyte backup. But now our security and governance team found out that this link is not encrypted, and they required us to enable encryption. When we enabled encryption, our 10 gig pipes are throttled down to 1.2 gig, because that's the limitation of IPsec in public cloud. So Aviatrix has this patented feature of which we call high performance encryption, HPE, and which allows us to dynamically build multiple IPsec tunnels that can do 1.2 gig and get you an aggregate throughput of 10 gig per direct connect. And if you have multiple direct connect, you can just scale out up to, and we have customers we're talking to who are doing 100 gig, and we're doing 100 gig encrypted tunnels or connection from on-prem to cloud for them. Right, so that's massive. So a high performance encryption is great, a feature that I think everybody should look into. And when we say high performance, our intra cloud, let's say in AWS, performance can go up to like 90 gig of encrypted communication from VPC to VPC via the transit. So that's massive throughput when encrypted, because otherwise if you don't use Aviatrix, you'll be limited to 1.2. So it's just a magnitude of difference. Then you have other features, for example, segmentation. So we have what we call multi-cloud network segmentation. So imagine, let's say you have line of business one, right? And or you have an enterprise and you do a merger acquisition and somebody else comes in and you have different departments. And what you want to do is, let's say if I have, a dev environment, right? I want dev to talk to dev, but I don't want dev to just freely talk to prod, right? Or UAT to freely talk to test, right? You have all these different things. But your dev or UAT or prod may not be limited to a single region, right? You may have some prod in region 1, some prod in region 2, some prod in Azure, some in dev or in GCP or CI, right? It can be spread all over. So how do I make so without massive manual effort such that all the prod can freely talk to all the prod, but not to dev or not to test, right? So this air gapping is a single click operation on Aviatrix, where we didn't really talk about the platform, but the key aspect of the platform is controller, which provides a centralized and unified control plane. So as a customer, what you do is you express your desired state of the network to Aviatrix controller, and Aviatrix translates that into the realized state. And then it continuously enforces that realized state, so that when you have new networks and seeders and environments coming in and going out, it continuously maintains the security posture for you without you having to do any manual effort, right? So that's a huge benefit of Aviatrix platform of consistent security posture implementation. And then you can insert firewalls, so next-gen firewalls, and you can say, hey, traffic needs to be redirected to firewalls. Then you have cloud-native applications, especially that live in VPCs that need access to stuff out on the internet. For example, my server need to go to Windows Update, or Ubuntu updates, or Canonical, or I need to go to GitHub and all these different places. I'm processing payments. I need to go to Visa or MasterCard or here and there, right? I can't give my applications a full free reign to go on the internet anywhere. I want my applications to be locked to specific destinations only. But I also don't want to do that by deploying a full-blown firewall in every VPC, because it's going to be too expensive. So Aviatrix has a solution for egress filtering, where you can define very easily list of tags, which are list of destination websites that the application should only be able to go to, and nothing else. And you don't require a next-gen firewall sitting in every VPC to do that, and Aviatrix will take care of that. And you define one set of tags, and you can apply to hundreds of thousands of VPCs if you choose to, right? So that's a very, very key important features, because all the customers who require PCI compliance, they use this, and it's one of the most used features of Aviatrix security platform. And then there's other things. So, if you're accessing S3 as an example, right, for storage, how do I secure S3? How do I limit another great feature that a lot of customers use is everybody has some outsourcing done, right? Some development work being done, or even if it's not outsourcing, but my dev team is working on this one specific application, which lives in this VPC or this VNet. Why do I need to give this guy or this team access to everything in the cloud, right? Because traditionally that's what would happen. How do I limit that access to specific VPCs, specific VNets, right? Without, a massive administrative overhead. So, I'm just touching upon a lot of these things, which are the need of enterprise from a security perspective in the cloud, and Aviatrix brings all of that. And last but not least, all of these things are seamlessly available in all the clouds. So that's the beauty, right? It's not that, this is only available in AWS and Azure. It's available in any cloud. So you start with the Aviatrix architecture, you deploy it in one region, one cloud, whatever. And as soon as you say, I need to go to another cloud, you're there. You don't need to re-architect anything. Same architecture just works.
Yeah, no, I played obviously with it a little bit, and I took one of the classes, the ACE certification as well as a partner. And so obviously, as we know, even in the on-prem world, right, everybody wants to keep their own little secret. So, you have proprietary technology with one vendor, another proprietary with another, and it's not that easy to kind of make them seamlessly not only work together, but just like you say, rinse and repeat. And so I think the same thing with the public cloud, right? Each one of the clouds has different components that basically can do very similar things, but it's a task to understand each one of those cloud providers and how they do things. So with the Aviatrix platform, definitely it's very seamless. And again, as we know, security mandates that certain or all traffic must go through a firewall, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud. So as we know, the cloud traffic, as you mentioned, it not only moves north and south, but it also moves east and west. What are you seeing? What's Aviatrix seeing as some of the problems with inserting some of these next generation firewalls in the cloud, as you talk about?
That's a great question, because I feel bad for the customers, right? If you take Aviatrix out of the picture and you really think about where customer stands, right? So let's say I'm the customer, right? And I'm in AWS or Azure, doesn't matter, right? Whichever cloud I am, I have a bunch of VPCs and VNets and this and that. And I bought a firewall, right? I bought Palo Alto, Checkpoint, Fortinet, whatever, right? I have this next-gen firewall. So I have the VPCs with my applications, and I have the firewalls. Now, how do I get the traffic that I want to be inspected to the firewall, right? Because they're just sitting at two different places, unless I put a firewall inside every VPC. but that doesn't scale because I may have hundreds or thousands of VPC. I can't do that, right? So what naturally I would do is, I'm going into the cloud, so cloud provider is going to provide me something, right? Because they provide everything. So you talk to the cloud provider, and the cloud provider is going to say, you know what? I'm going to give you these VPCs, and I'm going to give you these route tables, and I'm going to give you these things in bits and pieces, and you go figure it out yourself and stitch it together. Of course, as a customer, that's not the answer I'm looking for. So I would say, you know what? I'm buying the firewall from my firewall vendor. Let me go and talk to them. You go and talk to them. Their expertise is in building the security inside the appliance, but they're not cloud networking gurus, right? That's not their forte. That's not their business. So they would tell the customer, well, I can help you. I can give you a little bit of, the guidelines on how you do this and that. But at the end of the day, you have to manage those route tables. You have to build these IPsec tunnels. And then you have to do this where you would need IPsec, so 1.2 gig throughput, and you would need SNAT, so you know visibility and massive management overhead, right? So now as a customer, I'm like, what do I do? I have, both pieces, but how do I put these together? And literally, we have a customer who has 5 VPCs that they wanted to go through the Palo Alto firewalls. It took them over 6 months and a lot of money, but they were still not happy because they could route the traffic. But then, as I said earlier, just routing is not enough. You need scale, you need failover, you need visibility, you need all those things, right? The basic is not enough for enterprise. So that's where Aviatrix comes in, and we have a feature called Aviatrix FireNet or Firewall Network. So think of it as services, right? So because the service firewall is just one of the services, it could be many different kinds of services. So what we do is, using Aviatrix Controller, we manage the entire life cycle for customers. So we can do, from a customer says, well, I have these 50 VPCs, I need them to be redirected to firewall. We would, from our controller, you can deploy the firewall. Literally, you don't even have to go do anything yourself. We create the VPCs, the route tables, and subnets and associations and everything. Using our controller, you can deploy the firewall. So you can do checkpoint, Palo Alto, Fortinet and stuff. And you can pick the versions, and we would deploy, we would route, manage, configure it. Then as a customer, all you need to do is say, hey, which VPC traffic needs to be sent to the firewall? You just pick the VPC, prod, def, test, A, B, C, whatever. And Aviatrix Controller is going to manage all the routing and everything for you to redirect to the firewall. That's just the first piece of getting the traffic to the firewall. But of course, as I said, I need scale out. So with Aviatrix firewall networks, you can have up to 20 firewalls, and actually more, but 20 firewalls scale out with full throughput. Whatever the firewall vendor supports, full throughput. So an aggregate of about 80 gig or something we've tested already. And there's no natting. So full visibility, right? And then you can have various design patterns where you can have dedicated firewall that does all east, west, north, south, ingress, egress. But you can spread that out. You have one dedicated for east, west, and another dedicated for egress, another dedicated for ingress. So all these really complicated design patterns. And the last thing, because this is something interesting we recently did with F5, because when you redirect traffic to next-gen firewall like Palo Alto can do decryption, right? I mean, that's one of their features, and it's pretty good. Especially on-prem, it's really good. But when you're in the cloud, if I use the Palo Alto to do decryption, then of course it's taking a hit in the overall capacity what it can do. And then as an enterprise, I may not have just the next-gen firewall. I may have IPS IDS device, or I may have something else like a visibility device, something else that I'm service chaining. So if I try to decrypt at each individual device, then it's too much computation, right? So what we do is, using a F5 big IP as SSL offload and orchestrator. Okay. You can use the F5 big IP just for decrypting traffic, And then you have the Palo Altos and for example Cisco Firepower and other things, service chain behind it. So they get unencrypted data, they do whatever they need to do, they send it back to F5 and off it goes. And all of this is orchestrated using Aviatrix. So from a customer perspective, it is very simple and easy deployment, and you can have all people on Aviatrix side and F5 and Palo Alto side. We all have customers that we've done this for. So if any of the audience is interested, I think that is where things are moving from a security perspective.
No, that's great. That is, again, like I said, I played a little bit with it. When I was taking the class, there was something that, you guys were coming out with called the kickstart, which basically allowed me to create a multi-cloud network architecture without even having to know anything about it. It was just a couple clicks with some Terraform scripts that basically genned up, hub and spoke transit VNets and put that on AWS and Azure. So it's very cool. We're kind of coming up to the end of our time, Hammad, but I'd like for you to just share with us, if you wouldn't mind, one notable case study, that Aviatrix was able to help a customer solve.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would touch on what you just said, automation, right? Kickstart with automation. So everything that you do in Aviatrix, you can do via UI, click, but you can automate everything, right? So we have a lot of customers with infrastructure as code as something that they really believe in, and they're driving their complete automation with Aviatrix, right? So we have so many case studies, and what I would highly recommend audience, because oftentimes it's good to see a case study which aligns with the vertical, the business that you are in. So if you're a bank, and if I talk about a retail, it may not resonate as well, right? So definitely look at Aviatrix website, and we do tech talk every Tuesday, and we bring in customers who share their stories and what they do, right? I'll talk about one customer who's based out Southeast, and they were recently on our show, and they were talking about inserting firewalls. So one of the challenges that they had was, as I mentioned, they are financial customers. So basically they are credit card processing, they're a credit card vendor and lender for a lot of retail stores, right? So they have massive amount of websites that they need to manage. They have all the data has to be PCI compliant, and they cannot be in just single region. They have to be multi-region. They do a lot of acquisitions as well, so they need to have this ability to ingest new companies and new environments very easily, right? So if you think about it as a CIO, that's a lot of undertaking, right? So with Aviatrix, what they've been doing is they've defined their architecture, which is, again, as I said, repeatable architecture. So they were primarily AWS for the most part. And then what happened was they got a customer that was only gonna meet them in GCP, because they said, we can meet you in AWS. So this company, they were like, oh, we're gonna lose this business because we are AWS centric. But because they were using Aviatrix, they were able to, within a week, extend their environment from AWS into GCP and provide that seamless connectivity. And then one of their key requirements as their PCI compliant was security, around security. So for any traffic, it needed to be inspected by both Palo Alto and, in that case, Cisco Firepower. So they used F5 integration to do SL offloading and service chaining with Aviatrix to send the traffic to those two. Then they had VPCs where they had some Kubernetes clusters, EKS clusters sitting, that needed access to some payment processing APIs that out on the internet. And they used our Egress filtering to limit access from those Kubernetes cluster-based applications to specific websites without requiring a next-gen firewall sitting in there, right? So all of this was great for them, when they were doing architecture, but their operations team is the biggest fan of Aviatrix because now they're able to extend and do visibility and troubleshooting in cloud, in AWS, and in GCP in matter of seconds and minutes. And the network team loves us because the support team is not escalating to them, hey, there is a problem and we think it's the network. The support team is escalating issues to them with evidential data. So we have some tools like flight path. So we have built a standard operating procedure for their operations team where they run flight path first, which does analysis across security groups and NACLs and route tables and everything. And it tells them exactly which security group or NACL or route table has a missing entry. So they escalate that specific request to the team's network security saying, hey, we need this to talk to this, and security group and account this and ID this is missing this rule. And when they have to do any further analysis, they're able to use Copilot to actually see the data. So one of the last thing, I know we are coming up to time, that they shared was they were working with a partner that they were connecting in, and they were troubleshooting application issues. And this typically used to take weeks because it's a partner environment and their environment and cloud provider support and no visibility. They have no idea to see what the packets are doing. Is you're quite familiar with without packet captures and stuff.
Oh yeah.
So Copilot, what it does, it doesn't just show you the flows, it shows you the actual TCP flags of the traffic that was going in. And we saw that the SYN was coming in from on-prem, it was going to the VPC, and then a reset was coming. Oh. Right? And then we immediately said, hey, the network is good because the SYN is making all the way to the application. And then they realized later on that it was being, a wrong application, a wrong port was listening or something like that. But in a matter of seconds, they were able to get right to the problem. And those are the kind of things where and why customers really love Aviatrix architectures. Just build is one day of their life, right? Operate is every day of their life. And that's where, whatever we build with eyes and ears, customers love it.
No, I definitely agree. And I would challenge anybody that's in the cloud without obviously Aviatrix as a platform to try to do a packet capture, number one. Number two, try to even just do a simple trace route. You can't. Yeah. It's not, you cannot do that. So again, it's something that we're used to as network engineers and troubleshooting. And these are just simple things that we're used to in the on-prem world. And it's very difficult to do in the cloud. But again, Hammad, thank you for your time today. What I'd like to tell our audience is anybody that's interested in learning more about Aviatrix, please feel free to reach out to us at Sinnott Wolach Technology Group, and we'll be more than happy to set up some time where we can do a presentation and a demonstration of the Aviatrix product. So thank you again for joining us, Hammad, and I appreciate your time with Let's Talk Security.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Take care. Stay safe.
Take care.
Thank you everyone for watching. We hope you enjoyed today's webinar. Check out our YouTube channel for previous Let's Talk Security broadcasts. Just go to youtube.com and search for Sinnott Wolach Technology Group. This episode is sponsored by Aviatrix, One Architecture, One Network, any Cloud, and produced by Events by Drew Productions. Let's Talk Security is brought to you by Sinnott Wolach Technology Group, a leading provider of next-generation network and information security solutions and services.